I didn't grow up dreaming about ghosts. I grew up dreaming about being good at something hard. When I enlisted, I had a chip on my shoulder and something to prove, same as everybody else who ends up where I ended up. I did my time in a line unit first, then I went through the Q course, the Special Forces Qualification course, which is the long, miserable filter the Army uses to make Green Berets. People hear Green Beret and they think of a movie. The reality is a lot less Hollywood and a lot more homework. We're the guys the Army sends to work with other people's armies. By, with, and through is how they put it. You teach, you advise, you train, you live in the dirt with foreign soldiers for months. You learn their language and their food and their grudges. And when it comes time to fight, you fight alongside them instead of in front of them. The unit is built around a 12-man team called an ODA, an Operational Detachment Alpha. Most people just say A-team. 12 men, and every one of them is a specialist twice over. You've got your 2 weapons sergeants, your 2 engineers, your 2 medics, your 2 communications sergeants, an intel sergeant, the team sergeant who actually runs the thing, a warrant officer, and a captain who signs for all of it. The idea is that a single A-team is supposed to be able to walk into a country, link up with a few hundred locals, and turn them into something that can win. 12 guys, force multiplied into an army. That's the job. My team belonged to 10th Special Forces Group. If you've never heard of us, that's by design. But 10th Group is real enough. Fort Carson, Colorado, with a battalion forward in Germany, and a slice of the map that has always pointed at Europe and the high, cold ground around it. We were the Europe guys. Mountains, forests, old borders, old wars. We trained partner forces, we ran special reconnaissance, and once in a while, we did the kind of direct action work you don't talk about at Thanksgiving. That was the whole world, as far as I understood it. Real soldiers, real missions, real maps. Which is why, the day the tasking for hollow VESPER came down, every one of us could feel that something about it was wrong. It didn't come through normal channels. There was no operations order, no concept of operations, no intel dump, none of the usual 3-inch binder of how and why. What we got instead was a man in civilian clothes who flew in to brief us personally, in a room that had been swept twice that morning, and a folder so thin it embarrassed everybody in the building. He read us onto a program. He had us sign things. Then he told us almost nothing. There was a facility, he said, decommissioned, Cold War vintage, one of those hardened relay and listening stations that NATO had dug into the rock during the years when everybody expected the whole continent to go up at once. It had been closed for decades. Officially, it didn't exist anymore. Unofficially, it had never really been empty. For a long time, it had been minded by a small caretaker element, contractors mostly, rotating in and out, keeping the lights on and the doors locked and the monitoring equipment running. 2 weeks ago, the caretaker element had stopped answering. Our job, he said, was simple. Go in, verify the integrity of the site, account for the caretakers, re-establish the monitoring, come out. And then he gave us the standing orders. He didn't call them safety briefings. He called them standing orders, the way you'd say it about live fire, and he made us read them out loud, each man, one at a time. I have never forgotten a single one of them. 1. Do not go below the painted line in the main stairwell. Whatever your reason, there is no reason. 2. The internal communications net is not secure in the way you are used to. Voices on it will not always be your team. Any transmission that gives an order without the correct daily authentication is to be ignored completely. Do not answer it. Do not acknowledge it. 3. If you hear your name and cannot see the mouth that said it, you are alone, and you will treat the situation as hostile. 4. Maintain visual contact with your teammates at all times. No man moves below pairs. If you ever find yourself alone, that is not an accident, and it is not a coincidence. 5. If something answers you, do not follow it. Reyes, one of our weapons sergeants, asked the obvious question. He asked what was down there. The man in civilian clothes looked at him for a second too long, and then he said the only honest thing he said the whole brief. He said, "The occupant." And he said it the way you'd refer to a tenant you'd never met but whose rent always cleared. Then he told us the occupant was contained, that it had been contained for a very long time, and that our presence would not change that as long as we followed the orders he'd just given us. I have thought about the word contained almost every day since. Contained is a word you use when you can't say trapped, and can't say sleeping, and won't say waiting. We went in by ground at last light, the way you'd approach any site you didn't trust. 2 vehicles up a service road that the forest had spent 40 years trying to take back. The mountains there were the kind that don't have a friendly side. Steep, black with timber, the rock showing through in long gray scars where the slope had given out. The lower we got, the higher the ground rose around us, until the road dead-ended at a chain-link gate and a concrete face built straight into the mountainside, with a single steel blast door set in it like a tooth. The gate was open, not forced, open. Somebody had unlocked it from the inside and walked away and never come back to close it. We cleared the surface buildings first. There wasn't much. A couple of prefab structures, a generator shed still running, a dish tilted up at a sky it had stopped listening to decades ago. The caretakers' quarters were intact and undisturbed in a way that bothered me more than a fight would have. Beds made. A meal half eaten and gone to mold on a table. A paperback laid face down to hold a page, the way you do when you mean to come right back. Boots lined up by a door. The men who lived here hadn't packed. They hadn't run. They had simply, at some point, gotten up from whatever they were doing and gone down into the mountain, and the mountain had kept them. We knew that last part because the duty log told us. The caretakers had kept a paper log, by hand, the way old soldiers do when they don't trust electronics. And the last few weeks of it got harder to read the further you went. Early entries were routine. Generator serviced. Comms nominal. Quiet. Then they started writing things that weren't a log anymore. Heard the 7 o'clock relief call. There is no 7 o'clock relief. Marsh heard it too. And days later, do not answer the stairwell. It has Donnelly's voice now. Donnelly has been gone since Tuesday. And the last legible line, in a different hand, pressed so hard into the paper it had nearly torn through. It learns us. Don't let it learn you. The line holds. The line is the only thing that holds. That was when our team sergeant, a calm, gray, unflappable man I'll call Webb, who I had personally watched stay bored through actual gunfights, closed the log very gently and told us we were not splitting up for any reason and that nobody was going below the line. The facility went down. That was the whole architecture of the place. A series of levels driven straight down into the rock, connected by one central stairwell, a wide concrete shaft with a steel rail and a landing at each level. Somebody, a long time ago, had taken white paint and drawn a thick line across the stairs about 2 flights down, just past the second landing. Above the line, the world worked. Stale air, humming fluorescence, the ordinary tomb cold of a place built to survive the end of everything. Below the line, the lights didn't reach. The stairwell just kept going down into a black that the beam of a weapon light seemed to enter and not come back from. We set up on the top level where the old monitoring room was, and we got to work the way you do, methodically, 2-man teams, restoring power runs, getting the cameras back up, accounting for spaces. For the first few hours, it was almost normal, almost a job. And then night came on, the real night, the deep night you only get inside a mountain where there is no sky and never will be. And the first thing it took from us was sleep. I want to be precise about this because it's the part people don't understand. We weren't kept awake by fear, not at first. It was more like the off switch had been quietly removed. I lay down in my turn, dead tired, eyes closed, and the tiredness was there, but the sleep simply would not come, would not even start, the way a key won't turn in the wrong lock. One by one, we all gave up trying. Nobody said much about it. We just stopped pretending we were going to rest and started sitting up in the dark together, listening, the way the caretakers must have, at the end. And then the net came alive. The first call sounded exactly like Webb, calm, bored, his cadence to the letter. It told our 2 men on the lower landing to come down 1 more flight and check a power junction. It was so completely him that the junior man keyed up to acknowledge before our actual Webb, sitting right next to me, hadn't touched his radio, put a hand flat in the air and shook his head once. No authentication. The order had given no authentication. Standing order 2. Ignore it completely. Do not answer. We didn't answer. And the voice that was wearing Webb's voice waited a moment, and then it said the order again, word for word, in exactly the same calm and bored tone, except this time, underneath it, far down at the very bottom of the shaft, we could all hear the real sound of it. A voice trying to remember how a throat is supposed to work. It got worse after that, the way these things always seem to. The net started giving us our own voices back. I heard myself tell Reyes I'd found Donnelly. I had never said it. I didn't know who Donnelly was except a dead name in a logbook. But it was my voice, my exact pitch and grain played back at me from somewhere below the line. And I understood then what the caretakers had meant. It learns us. It had been down there in the dark for who knows how long, with nothing to do but listen to men talk, and it had learned what we sounded like, and now it was practicing being us. That's when Reyes broke. I don't blame him. I want that said plainly. You don't know what you'll do until a thing reaches into the place where your family lives and uses it as a hook. What it used on Reyes was his brother's voice. His brother had died 3 years before, in a way Reyes never talked about, and the thing below the line knew that. I still don't understand how it knew that. And it called up the stairwell to him in his dead brother's voice, soft and unhurried, asking him to come down. Just come down. Just to the next landing. Just to where he could see. And Reyes, who I had trusted with my life on 3 continents, stood up in the dark with his face gone slack and wrong and started for the stairs. We caught him at the second landing, both of us, me and the other weapons sergeant, with the white line a single step below his boots, and the black past it, absolutely silent now, because it knew it nearly had him, and it didn't want to spook the catch. Reyes fought us. He fought us hard, the way a drowning man fights, and the voice kept coming up out of the dark, patient and loving, his brother begging him to just come see. We got him down on the concrete above the line, and I had his collar in both fists, and I was screaming into his face to look at me, and somewhere in there my own voice cracked, and the thing in the dark heard it. I have replayed the next part more times than I can count, and I still can't make it ordinary. Because the second my voice broke, the begging stopped. The dead brother voice just shut off, mid-word, and a different sound came up the shaft. The sound of something the size of a man, but jointed wrong, coming up off all fours and up the lower flights toward the line, fast, the way nothing that big should be able to move in the dark. My weapon light was already up. I put it down the shaft. I am not going to be able to describe it the way you want me to, because I didn't get to see it the way you'd need to. It came up out of the black to just below the line, and it stopped exactly where the paint was. And what the light found was a shape that the eye refused to keep. Too tall, folded down to fit the stairwell, pale the way a thing is pale that has never once been outside. Long, the arms wrong, the face wouldn't resolve. I'd look at it and my eyes would slide off, the way they do off the sun. And afterward, I couldn't have told you a single feature, only that it was watching me, and that there was too much patience in it for any animal. It did not cross the line. It came right up to the edge of the paint, close enough that I could have reached it, and it didn't put so much as a finger across. And then it spoke to me, in my voice, the one it had taken 20 minutes ago. It said, "Thank you for coming." And it was glad. That's the part I can't get out from under, all these years later. It wasn't hungry or angry or any of the things you could live with. It was glad. The way you're glad when company finally arrives. We dragged Reyes back up the stairwell with his weapon light blazing behind us, and behind that light, the thing did not follow us past the line, but it called to us the whole way up, all the way up, in our own voices, in Webb's voice, in the voices of men we'd lost years before and 1,000 miles away, in voices I didn't recognize and didn't want to, a whole chorus of borrowed throats begging the company not to leave so soon. We got out before dawn. We did not reestablish the monitoring. We did not account for the caretakers, except to understand, without ever saying it out loud, exactly where the caretakers had gone. Webb made the call to abort, and not one man argued. We sealed the blast door, and we chained the outer gate that the last caretaker had left open, and we drove up out of those black mountains and did not stop and did not speak. When the man in civilian clothes debriefed us, he asked a great many careful questions, and he never once seemed surprised by any of the answers. That's the detail that stayed with me. He wasn't learning anything. He was checking it against something he already knew. When I told him the thing had spoken in my own voice, he wrote it down, and he nodded, and he said, and I'm quoting him exactly, "That's why we tell you not to let it hear you scared. It can't reach you across the line, but it can keep what it takes." I asked him what it kept. He told me the program was finished, thanked us for our service, and reminded me what I'd signed. Officially, none of it happened. There is no hollow VESPER. There is no facility. If you went looking, you would find a decommissioned NATO relay station in the side of a mountain, long closed, of no interest to anyone, and a chained gate, and a logbook that was probably burned years ago by men like the one who briefed us. The Army has a long, careful history of not finding records of the things it can't afford to have found. I understand why. I even agree with it. Some doors are better left chained. But here's the thing I have never been able to put down. The question Reyes and I have circled in the dark more than once in the years since, on the phone at 3 in the morning when neither of us can sleep. And I should tell you that the sleep has never come back quite right for either of us. Not all the way, not since the mountain. It took my voice. It practiced being me. It told me, in my own words, that it was glad I came. And I have always wondered what a thing like that does with a voice it kept. Whether it's down there in the black at the bottom of that stairwell right now, in the patient dark below the line, using mine, calling up the shaft to the next men who get sent down there to verify an empty site, calling them by their names in a voice that they'll trust, because it'll be the voice of a Green Beret, calm and bored and sure, telling them it's all right, telling them to just come down, just to the line, just to where they can see. I don't expect you to believe me. I wouldn't if I hadn't stood one step above that paint and heard it thank me in my own voice for coming. But the gate is chained, and the line still holds. And as far as I know, it has never once needed to cross it.
It just has to be patient, and it has all the time in the world.